cover today. This might go long, so I'm going to hit the ground running. Easter liturgies. So, liturgies, basically the way that we worship God during Easter. And basically, this may just turn into story time, and you're just going to have to run with this. So, in many ways, I talked to you yesterday about that traveler lady, Egeria. So, late 4th century, noble lady, she goes to Jerusalem, and she gets to experience the Easter liturgies right off the bat. And she writes down everything. And it was kind of cool how they did it there. So they have all the actual spots. So they have this place called the Martyrium, for example, which is the place where St. Helen, Helen found the pieces of the true cross. And so that's their main church there. Then out beside that, they have the Anastasis, which we talked about yesterday, which is basically the place of Christ's resurrection. And then they have the Eliona, they have the where the Church of All Nations is, the Garden of Gethsemane in that area there. Where he suffered the night before. They have the church where the Passover, the meal took place with him. They have the Lazareum for Lazarus. They have all kinds of cool places. All that being said, when it comes to Holy Week, they begin to celebrate in the place where each of these things happened, which we don't have the ability to do in many ways. But as she's telling the story, it's very detailed, and you get to kind of put yourself in this position. And when you add it with the other historical context of the early Christians, we get to see exactly how they did it. Now, the funny thing is that when Egeria comes and she sees this, the way she explains the Easter Vigil as we start Easter, she says all this great detail. And then she says, and then they celebrated Easter in the exact same way that we do. Now, this is over in Spain. So this is Jerusalem. We think she was kind of over in the Spain region for the most part, but they celebrated the exact same way. She says, except they do it a lot more elaborately, a lot more pomp and circumstance here, which it's the place where it happened. It makes sense. But it's kind of funny the way, and then when she begins the little pieces that we do have from the liturgies and the lectionaries from that time, they say, when they would go over, they would light a Paschal candle. So when they would go to the Anastasis to begin the Easter Vigil, they would light the Paschal candle. Interesting. That sounds familiar. So if you don't keep an extra old Paschal candle in your office. So I don't. I borrowed this from Father Teo. So this is a 2016 one, but this is the Paschal candle. And it always, there are different things that represent Christ, this large candle, in ways. And so when we incense throughout, we always incense the places where Christ is. So whenever you use incense in Easter time, you would always incense the Paschal candle. And the Paschal candle always represents, in funerals lights, it represents our baptism, the candles. It represents Christ himself, most notably in the Easter candle. So I have the little prayer here that said it. So when you light the fire, look at it, it's just wax is falling off. When you light the fire and you light this candle, there are certain things. So you take this knife. You don't have a knife on your desk? So they take this knife and they cut a line and a cross in the middle, and it says Christ yesterday, today, the beginning and the end. And then you'll see I'm trying to do this backwards. An alpha is inscribed on the top and an omega in the bottom. So the alpha and the omega, and then the numbers are then inscribed on the candle for that time of year. And it's all time belongs to him, and all the ages, to him be glory and power through every age, forever and ever. Amen. And then normally 5 incense needles are placed. There's only 4 here, and then there's normally 1 in the center. And with each one, there's something is said. And so when you see the priest doing this at the Easter Vigil, he says, by his holy and glorious wounds, may Christ the Lord guard us and protect us. Amen. And so whenever you see those kind of sticking out, when you see your candle, if you go to a baptism or a funeral, all of that is kind of showing that this, in a way, is Christ's body, the 5 wounds of Christ, how he is in charge and over all time and space. And so it's kind of cool the way that works out. So that's your Paschal candle and your sword for the day. The Exultet, they say, the Paschal candle is lit and the Exultet is sung. That sounds familiar too, doesn't it? We still work on that, do that today ourselves. And singing the Exultet, the history of our salvation put into form. And it's beautiful when it's sung. Exultet, let angels exalt the host of heaven. Well, okay. It's beautiful when it's sung by someone who's not me. So the Easter Vigils are one that they are full of solemnity. They're full of history. They've been celebrated so similarly throughout the ages. It's funny, even by the late 4th century, we see that this lady Egeria says, yeah, and she's describing everything, and she says, and the Easter Vigil is exactly like we do it. And then we follow that same, if they were to go and look how we do it now, it would be very similar based on what the documents we have, the preparation of the catechumens coming in, the baptism after all that happens in the Easter Vigil. Back then, they had more preparation for those coming into the church. And the baptisms were ones where they would be stripped and then anointed head to toe, and then baptized and come out, and the white robes placed, and the prayers with the bishop, and then they would move from the different church to church where certain things happened in the Holy Land. Very exciting. Could talk about it forever. Just wanted to give you an idea of what we celebrate in our Easter liturgies, and we'll talk more about colors and decorations and things maybe tomorrow of what changes. But just wanted you to know that the way we celebrate and these things that have been done, they are, as the cross says, out of time and space. They are timeless, and we've done this since the beginning, and we continue to do it and will continue for time and time to come. So join us tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the specific things we do at Easter liturgies. Take it easy.